Hey, we're live. How are you, Jeff?
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me.
I am very pleased to have Jeff Shaw with me today. Jeff has been doing comedy you've been doing it for about 30 years, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Over 30 years.
And I had the pleasure of seeing you about a month ago in an outdoor live venue. And I got to tell you, I hadn't seen live comedy because I don't just do comedy, I'm a fan. And I hadn't seen live comedy since I think my last one was the beginning of March. And it was sure nice to get out and see you, and you did a fantastic job.
Oh, well, cool. Thank you very much. I wish you had introduced yourself afterwards.
Yeah, it was one of those nights. I didn't feel like it was a good idea because I knew you had like a 5 hour drive back to Cleveland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5 hours.
And I hate to
Five
be,
long hours back to Cleveland. Like, Cleveland's like the only place you don't want to go back to after leaving Leesburg, Indiana.
yeah, I just didn't want to feel like one of those clingy fans. So I said, let the guys go home. And so now I got you here, and this is the
Cool.
way I like to talk anyway. So that's cool.
Great.
So-
I've listened to the podcast. It's good. You're doing a good job.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I'm the way I do this, I kind of told you before we started, but I kind of do what's called the rapid round. We do this part live, and then we go off live for the real stuff. And folks, if you want to hear all my interviews, I think I've got 40 of them up now. Just go to Behind the Bits, type in Behind the Bits in any podcast app, Apple, Android, your computer, whatever you want to do, or go to the BTB PC and give that a listen. I do want to do a quick plug before we get in for one of my shows. I am going to be at the Plano Virtual Comedy Festival, and my show is Saturday night at, I believe I'm at 6 o'clock. No, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central. So just go to planocomedyfestival.com to look for tickets. You can also look at my personal page. I've got the event up there. You can buy just my show. You can buy the whole shooting match, all 4 days. But the Plano Comedy Festival is great. They've got people like Steve Hofstetter, Kurt Braunohler, and little old guys like me, too. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Now,
So
you said
this-
you don't do comedy, but when you say show, do you mean this podcast?
Yeah, I do. I dabble in stand-up. I didn't start until I was 52, so I don't
okay.
consider myself a seasoned stand-up, but I've always been kind of a comedy nerd. And so the reason for this podcast is to talk to comedians, find out what they're made of, find out how they got where they are and how they write and stuff like that. And then I document it and I put it out for all those young comics to listen to and learn from.
Great.
Yeah, that's.
Well, you're doing a service for the community.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. Gotten to meet some really cool people, some people I didn't know that their agents actually approached me. So it's really neat to find some of these up and comers, and then people like you have been doing it for a long time.
Well, that'll stop after my interview.
No, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So the rapid round, like I said, is kind of an Entertainment Tonight thing where I ask you some canned questions and then we go into the real stuff. And boy, have I got some real stuff for you when we get into the real interview, because I did a deep dive into Jeff Shaw.
Great.
So first of all, I know you're in Cleveland now. Where are you originally from, Jeff?
From Cleveland.
Oh, really? Cool. So, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Cleveland rocks.
People always ask me when I go, "Where are you from?" I go, "Cleveland." They go, "Really?" No, I'm just saying that to impress you.
Yeah. Well, it's still better than Mishawaka, Indiana. So you're definitely a step up from me. So when did you start doing stand-up, Jeff?
I started doing stand-up in 1986 at the old Cleveland Comedy Club.
All right.
And I started off with Drew Carey and Steve Harvey. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure what those two losers are doing now, but I'm on Behind the Bits, baby.
Yeah. As Bob Zaney would say, you've arrived, baby.
Yeah. But there was a club in Cleveland called the Cleveland Comedy Club, and I did my first open mic on August 16th, 1986. I bombed so badly I never went back until February of 87.
Okay.
That's when Hilarities opened. I started doing open mics at Hilarities in Cleveland and Hilarities in Cuyahoga Falls, which is Akron, Ohio. And and this was the old days. This was during the comedy boom. So in the fall of '87, after like less than a year of doing stand-up, I was on the road featuring as a professional.
Wow, that's fantastic. And thinking about that first time that you went up, what was the impetus? What was it that made you want to try the whole stand-up thing?
Well, the first thing was I was a huge fan. I was a huge fan of stand-up. I was one of those kids that was always in bed at night with the lights out with the comedy albums that I got from the library playing, George Carlin, and Bill Cosby. And I was a huge Jerry Lewis fan when I was a kid, the Bowery Boys, the Three Stooges, and Laugh-In, and all the variety shows, Bob Hope. And then in 1975, I discovered Saturday Night Live and became a big fan of Andy Kaufman. Yeah. And I ripped off his act and I did my own little version of his act in school talent shows and campground talent shows. And then we got cable TV when I was 13. I started watching all the comedy specials on Showtime and buying a lot of comedy albums. And then I took an acting theater class my last year of high school. And my teacher liked one of my skits and said, "You're so funny, you should try open mic night at the Cleveland Comedy Club." I filed that away. And then when I came home from active duty training for the Army Reserves, I was all finished up with all my training. I decided to give comedy a try. And I had been home on leave from the Army Reserves. I was going to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, city of Monterey, to be a Czech linguist for Army intelligence. And I discovered David Letterman when I was there because one of the guys down the hall was a big fan. And we were watching Stephen Wright, and I discovered Emo Phillips. And then I bought Emo Phillips's albums and Stephen Wright's album. And then I was hooked because I considered myself to be kind of a weird kid, and they made weird cool. So I thought, if I can't be cool, I'll make weird cool. And I'd already been a Rodney Dangerfield and Andy Kaufman fan. So the writing that these two guys displayed on their albums, that was enough to seal the deal for me. And so then I saw Eddie Murphy at a sold-out Blossom Music Center in 1986 to like 18,000 people. And I said, okay, I got to give this a try. And I've been working at my dad's factory with the anticipation of going to college in the fall. And I was writing jokes down on my lunch break and stuff like that. And so by the time August rolled around, I had like 3 little notebooks of jokes.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was delusional as a kid. Ego had a lot to do with it. Yeah. Because I liked those comics, but any comic outside of those guys, I didn't think was funny. So I watched The Tonight Show with my dad, and I would sit there like this guy ain't going to be funny. I remember yelling at the screen when Jerry Seinfeld was on. He was doing a bit about monkeys drinking banana daiquiris. And I'm like, come on, this guy's on TV, and I'm working in a factory. Give me a break, And so I would watch all these great comics, and I would think they would stink. So I decided to try my open mic night experience. Finally, I watched some comedian on The Tonight Show. I said, "This is it. I can't take it. These guys are awful." So I had all my jokes written, and I called the Cleveland Comedy Club, and they said, "We have open mic night on Sunday night. Come on down." So to give you an idea of how delusional some 19-year-olds can be when it comes to stand-up comedy, at least in the 80s, and I kid you not, this is a story I've told other people. I was so clueless that I showed up at my first open mic night, and that Sunday in August 1986, with a suitcase in the trunk of my car, packed with a couple of changes of clothes. I forgot what the gift was, but I had a gift for Johnny Carson. I had enough cash to buy a plane ticket, and I had somebody that would pick up my car from downtown for me if a limo took me to the airport. I was convinced that when I did the open mic night on Sunday night, that the Cleveland Comedy Club would call the Tonight Show hotline and tell Johnny Carson to have me on the show the next day. So I had clothes, I had money for a plane ticket, someone was going to get my car for me. And I thought, and then so I drove past the comedy club and I saw a long line of people under the awning. Some of them sitting on the floor, and I said, "Wow, how do they know I'm here?" I wonder, because I don't remember telling the guy on the phone my name. I might have, but I don't know how. Maybe I don't know. How did he find out? Well, okay, well, good. I guess they know. So I really thought those people are here to see me. So I park my car. I leave everything in the trunk. I go, and I see that everyone in line is talking to each other, and they're all scruffy looking. They're all kind of look like a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, not like a typical audience for a comedy club. Not that I would have known what that was. I had never been to a comedy club. Right. This is my first time even driving past a comedy club. Okay, so I show up and I see all these guys in line, most of them men. And I hear them talking about, Scott won the comedy contest last week. He'd been doing it 5 years. That's the first time he ever won. Now, he doesn't think he has enough material to do a new set when he comes back, so he's going to repeat the stuff. How's that one bit that you were doing there, Bob? I don't know. This is about the 100th time I've tried it, and I don't know if I can get it to work, but you can watch tonight. How long have you been doing open mics? Have you been doing an open mic down in Akron? Yeah, I've been doing that for about 2 years. They haven't passed me yet. I can't get an MC week, but it's coming along. And I'm like, what are these guys talking about? I'm here to become a star to go on the Tonight Show tomorrow. And all of a sudden I start to get this sinking feeling. People talking about comedy like a long process, and they've been doing open mics and practicing it, and it's taking hundreds of times to get their jokes work. And I get this like sickening feeling. And I'm like, and then these guys look at me and I go, "Is this the line for the comedy club?" They go, "Yeah, we're the comics. Were you here for the open mic night?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, get in line. They'll pick numbers and stuff. We're all going on." And I'm like, I thought I'd be the only one.
Yeah.
And so I get picked to go onto the show, and I'm in the back of the room watching the other comedians. I've never been on stage before, and I'm getting angrier and angrier. I want to go up and knock the mic out of everybody's hand and tell them to go work at Denny's. You can never be a comedian. I'm like, Why are these people wasting the audience's time? Get me up there so we can get me on a plane and get me to Burbank. And I was in the Army Reserves, as I told you. So I had the black military glasses. I had the high and tight, military haircut. And I had gotten an old suit from like the Salvation Army with a little white shirt and a tie, and I had it all in a bag. And I asked the MC to tell me, like, when there's a comic or two in front of me. And when it was getting ready to be my time, I went into the bathroom and changed. And I walked out wearing my military glasses, my buzz cut, my little gray suit with the white shirt and a black tie. And as soon as I walk out of the bathroom, I hear the MC say, "Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian is a regular here at the Cleveland Comedy Club. He's one of the paid professional MCs, and he'll be MCing here for Bill Wall next week. Ladies and gentlemen, how about a big round of applause for Drew Carey?"
Oh, wow.
And I see Drew Carey walk on with the military glasses, the buzz cut, and the same type of suit. And I go, and then he starts killing, and back at the time, he had he had props and things like that too back in the day in '86. But Drew Carey was so funny. So I run back in the bathroom. I change back into my jeans and turtleneck, whatever. And he's wearing the black glasses. So I had to take them off, and I didn't have contacts at the time, and I didn't want to wear my regular glasses. So I went on stage without any glasses, and I'm freaking out. And I've got my note cards. And also, everybody there had memorized their acts. I had brought all of my cards, and I asked the MC, "Where's the cue card guy? Who do I give my jokes to?" Put him on the cue card. "What are you talking about? You don't have a cue card." I go, "Well, how am I going to do my jokes?" He goes, "Just take them on stage with you." I thought there'd be like the Tonight Show, that I would be reading the cue cards. So now I'm freaking out, and Drew Carey kills. And then I hear Mike Malik, the MC, say, "All right, we've got a treat for you. Not a regular part of our open mic gang here. This is his first time on stage ever. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Jeff Shaw. So I can't see, and it's a really dark room. It was like black with like red tablecloths and candles. We called it Satan's motorhome.
Yeah.
You know, it was shaped like a double wide, and it was all black inside. And then I went to get on stage, and I couldn't see, so I missed a step, and I fell on the table in front of the stage, knocking stuff everywhere. And then then I heard somebody say, we normally say get off the stage, but get on the stage. And so I climb onto the stage, and I'm just like and I think I got somebody's chicken wings on me, whatever. Now I'm standing on the stage, and it's complete silence, and I don't have my glasses on, and nobody told me that there'd be white spotlights in my eyes. Nobody told me what my voice would sound like on a microphone. And all of a sudden, he introduced me as Jaded Jeff Shaw. So that was my stage name. I thought jaded meant wacky or weird. I didn't know what jaded meant even. So I know it was alliterative. Yeah. Jaded Jeff was alliterative. So for those of you watching the stream here and not listening to podcasts, this is how the faces I made. I had a microphone, and I was kind of like doing this weird type of character. And I said, "Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm in a bad mood. Found out my sister's been cheating on me. Wait till my uncle finds out. Boy, is grandpa going to be pissed." And then I did a whole bit about my girlfriend being a leper princess, and I went to the leper colony to meet her mom, her dad, Fester, her dog, Spots, her cat, Puss in Boots. And people started booing me. And and all of a sudden, all my showbiz dreams, like I really thought that I'd be doing the Tonight Show, getting the couch with that material. So I bolted off the stage after like 2 or 3 minutes, and I heard the MC Mike Malik go back up and go, "Hey, let's hear it for that Jeff Shaw kid. Kind of a short set. I caught it between strokes in the men's room." And normally I don't like to relay anything that's kind of somewhat blue like that, but that's exactly what he said. And the audience died laughing. Yeah. And I repeat it only because I remember hearing that vividly and I heard that laughter, and that was the type of laughter that I was supposed to get. And he got a joke at my expense. Welcome to comedy. And then I ran out into the lobby, and I was hyperventilating, and I was bent over, freaking out. And then I hear a poke, poke. I feel a poke, 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 poke. Hey, kid, poke. Hey, kid, hey, kid. And I turn around, and it's Drew Carey.
Oh, wow.
He goes, hey, not bad for your first time. I like that one joke he did. And he repeated one of my jokes to me. I go, which joke is that? He goes, I like that one joke he did. I said, which joke is that? He said, my mom says I'm so slow I'd be late to my own funeral. I said, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't even go. I never liked the bum in the first place. That was actually my one good joke. I mean, a lot of the jokes I did back then were like Stephen Wright-ish and emo. Like I had one joke was my uncle got thrown out of a mime show for having a seizure. They thought he was heckling. And then I did a joke. I said, I tried to have phone sex with a woman. She said, "Not tonight. I have an earache." and then
that's
like
good stuff.
Right, but then like a month later, I saw Jay Leno do a similar joke on Letterman, and I was trying to get Jay Leno's address so I can accuse him of stealing my joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how clueless I was. So what I try to tell people when you're a young comedian, you stink, but you think you're great. Yeah. And then 30 years later, you become a great comedian, but you think you stink. Yeah. That's how it works.
That's very true. the kids that are watching and the kids that are listening after this is put up, you have to understand Jeff
Like kids,
is.
you mean young comedians. You don't mean like this is going to be shown after like Romper Room or something.
Right. Yeah. But I'm talking to the young ones right now because you're just a couple years younger than I am. And you have to know that being as naive as you were was a lot easier back then because there was no internet. You didn't know how Carson got his comics. And you had the TV and you had the TV guide. That's all you had. And when you saw those comics up there, you thought that they were discovered in Cleveland. And I can totally relate to that because I probably would have thought the same thing about South Bend. So it's a little bit delusional, but the funny thing is the internet has changed things so much and I like to compare that to like music. Being in the Midwest, I'm a big music guy. And when we were young, East Coast and West Coast got all the good stuff, and we didn't get it until about 2 years after that. So, I didn't get Talking Heads or Blondie or any of that stuff until after that. And it was only because the Notre Dame radio did a thing at night for like 2 hours that some guy took over the DJ, and he was from the East Coast. So I got to hear those then. And as far as the media is concerned, we didn't know.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that the internet has demystified everything to an extent. And back in the old days, show business was more mysterious.
Yeah,
and it was also it was so much harder to get any information on stand-up comedy or how it's done. It was so esoteric back then. That's why you hear stories about a young Judd Apatow tracking down, big time comics, or at the time weren't big time, but like Jay Leno and Jerry Seinfeld. Those interviews that he did with them when he was a high school kid, for his high school newspaper. I mean, it was mostly because he wanted to learn about comedy, and there's like nowhere to do it. Drew Carey gave me one book. It was called Comedy Writing Secrets by Professor Melvin Helleter, and that's usually one that most people started off with back in the 80s. And that's still in print today. Yeah. But it wasn't like you can, and then there was Gene Peret's books, but you have to order them special, or see if your library had them. Yeah. So it was easier to be delusional, but it was harder to get good.
Oh yeah.
So then you had to like watch, you had to actually stay up unless you like. I think I got my first VCR like in 86 or 87, but you stay up at night and watch Carson, watch Letterman, and also too, one of the things that did me in the beginning is I had a weird sense of humor, but I was very inventive, and I liked stuff that was weird and inventive. And most of the comics in the local scene would tell me, "Wow, you're such a good writer. You're a good writer." And I never say that to young comedians unless their jokes are good. I never tell people they're a good writer because their concepts are good or because they're trying hard, because they're trying to be original. You're a good writer if you write well. And that's the hardest thing there is. So one of the things that did me in is because people didn't know how to give me advice, because most great comedians didn't even know how they learned what they learned. So it was hard for them to pass advice on the people. Right. So they'd see you go up there and maybe you don't get big laughs, but you have some stuff that they're laughing at in the back of the room. And they go, "Wow, this kid's different. He's original. He's trying hard. Wow, man, you're a good writer." So what happens is if people tell you that you're a good writer when you first started, you're not going to listen to the audience. When the audience isn't laughing at you or a joke doesn't work, screw those people. It's funny.
Yeah.
So I never really learned what I was doing wrong because so many people were patting me on the back for being weird and different and maybe having some good ideas or good premises. But with comedy, the best way to become a comedian is to learn how to write jokes.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do to become a comedian.
Yeah. No
like there's one way you can do it. You can say, I can say to you, based on my hair and my voice, a lot of people aren't sure what my sexuality is. Mm-hmm. That's not a joke. Right. But if I say hi, if I say I have a girlfriend, my apologies to everybody who just lost a bet. That is a joke.
That gets.
And the problem is, so many comedians will go up and say, "Hey, people can't tell I'm here because of my voice," instead of doing the joke. So when you're a young comedian, like, the best thing you can do, the most important thing, is learn how to write material. Everything else is secondary.
Yeah.
And you have to, so nowadays, so the point I'm getting at, so many books, there's so many comedy classes. You can, like, almost every big city comedy club has a comic whose wife told him to get off the road, so he's teaching a comedy class on Saturdays. Yeah. There are classes on Udemy and the internet, and there's websites. There's so many books on Amazon that you can get. And so a lot of people are taking the stage for the first time after taking formal classes in stand-up. A lot of the courses, you'll go to classes on Saturday for 4 to 8 weeks, and the graduation will be a 5-minute set in an A room on an off night. Yeah. And then everybody's friends and relatives come to the show. So nowadays, you have the benefit of the art of stand-up being shareable and teachable and learnable. But at the same time, it's brought so many people in who think it's going to be easy or doing it for the wrong reasons. So there's just so many people trying it now that sometimes the feeling of being like in a band of brothers or like a secret society, all for one and one for all, that specialness of it is kind of lost to a degree. Yeah. So it's pros and cons, but I am a huge fan of stand-up comedy, and so I still buy and read comedy books. Yeah. I just reordered some of my favorite books to have new copies because they've been updated, and I'm constantly watching stand-up. I watch every special. I listen to every podcast. I'm doing a lot of podcasts with, like, the local comedians here in Cleveland. You never stop learning, you know, and the key is now, because so much comedy is available online, I have become a fan of modern comedy and embracing modern comedy and learning and seeing what all these young people have been doing over the past 10 years help me stay relative and be able to become a comedian again, because I'm not doing the same type of stuff that I did back in the 80s or even the 90s. And a lot of comics are intimidated by the modern style of comedy. By modern, I mean over the past 20 years, where it's confessional, where it's premise driven instead of like formula driven. Right. Right. And it's
not all set up punch.
Right. And even if it is set up punch, like a lot of the greatest set up punch comics in the 80s, and even in the 90s, they had great jokes, but there were no premises. So now, I mean, the best set up punch comedians that you see on television, I give you an example. Mitch Hedberg, in the early 2000s, he was totally set up punch, but he would say, like, I don't have a girlfriend, but I do know someone who'd be very, very angry to hear that. Yeah. Now, do you see, that's just a set up punch, but that's about something. It's about how, sometimes, women think, that they're in a relationship and the man doesn't, or one person relationship isn't committed. And there's so much going on there. So there's a reason behind the joke, and there's a dynamic there that people can relate to. So nowadays, if your comedy doesn't have that dynamic, like a premise, an underlying premise, or if it doesn't have a reason to exist. There are so many comics these days that nobody needs anymore. We don't need anybody's jokes. Yeah. But everybody's unique point of view on life is welcome. Yes. And so if you can inject your comedy with that, then that's why you can watch a Comedy Central mixtape on YouTube where 10 comics are talking about roommates or 10 comics talking about college or marriage or breakups. And it doesn't matter that they're all talking about the same thing, because they're all bringing a different point of view to it. And so hack comedy isn't really about what the topics are. It's the word hack describes comedy that's lacking an underlying premise or insight into the human condition, which gives the joke a reason to exist. And once I figured all that out, I can basically keep my style, which is more on the shorter side. You know, I do act outs and stuff, but I'm more like a set up punch type of guy. And then my hunks are a bunch of jokes strung together, all on with the same type of premise. But and a lot of comics trying to make the transition from the 80s and 90s to the new comedy age had a hard time figuring it out and realized that doing the act that they did years ago. And so this is why you see on the cruise ships like Carnival Cruise Line, who we can talk about later, that's who I was involved with for a long time. Most of the comedians on cruise ships now are not the hacky, stereotypical cruise ship comics that you think of. You know, most of the comics working ships today, you know, except for a few older guys have been grandfathered in, you know, a lot of the comics are top comics who can like, work clubs and do television, but are maybe in their 40s or 50s, and so they're not getting that heat like they used to. So cruise ships have become a place for journeyman comics who have been able to grow with the times and to adapt to the new comedic sensibilities and to find out who they are and start expressing that on stage. So nowadays, when you go to a comedy clubs on cruise ships, you see guys who are progressing now more than they ever did back on the road in the 80s. You know, a lot of the comedians who work for Carnival Cruise Lines have like 3 to 5 different half-hour shows, no repeated jokes. And you have to learn how to hold an audience attention with no opening act and lots of distractions in a noisy little back lounge with a different demographic sitting in each seat right in front of you. You know, so I am excited by stand-up comedy still to this day. But the big problem is now with comedy being so huge in our culture and so many ways to view great comics, so many great record labels, so many great internet companies are putting out internet specials and so many great comedy club chains, so many apps you can download, and there's so many podcasts on comedy that now there are so many opportunities for a comic like me to see people half my age who are 10 times more talented than me. And you have to be able to deal with that. If you can't, then don't even turn on your computer.
Oh man, I feel that so much. That's really good. So this has been probably my longest rapid round ever, but it's because you were so engaging. I want folks to know that I'm going to finish talking to Jeff offline, but when this episode comes up, all you got to do is type in Behind the Bits into any podcast app and subscribe, and you can listen to all my great interviews with great comedians. And Jeff, it's been fun. It's been fun doing this rapid round. You answered all my questions before I asked them, which is great. And I wanted to ask you if you've got anything going on, any virtual comedy or anything going on, or on any other podcasts that you'd like to talk about.
I will be appearing on Lenny Schmidt's Quarantine Comedy next Tuesday, 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. It'll be a live show. It's a great a podcast, video cast. And I'll be doing some other podcasts too, such as the Brown Petri Dish out of Cleveland, and Waking Up in the Morning with Dougie Almeida's podcast. And my special is streaming on Dry Bar Comedy. You can find it on Facebook, on the Dry Bar Comedy page, but also on YouTube. Just put Jeff Shaw Dry Bar Comedy. My website is jeffthefundude.com. And I have a new album coming out this fall. It's called Jeff with 2 F's, and it'll be on Tour Records.
Oh, excellent. I'm looking forward to that. Well, thanks so much for doing the wraparound with me, Jeff. We're going to go off live. I just want to put a plug in for my show on Saturday. That is PlanoComedyFest.com, comedyfestival.com. Just go there. It's a Saturday show. You can find my picture, and I'll be doing comedy. So thank you folks for watching. We had quite a few of you today, but this is just a teaser, so I'm going to get real with Jeff after we get off of here. So bye, folks. Be nice to each other.